Hello, and welcome to our series of talks with inspiring entrepreneurs during International Women's Month. On the sofa, I have Tania Boler, who started her career doing a PhD in South Africa on HIV and pregnancy. She then moved on to the UN, where she instigated the first initiative on sex education. And most recently, she's known as the founder and president of Elvie, inspiring and very necessary products for women in the FemTech space. Welcome to the sofa.
Thank you.
So nice to have you. We have been on a panel before, and I think at Financial Times, we were both on a panel together. And when I was on the panel, I was thinking, my God, that's the smartest woman in the room. When you were talking, I was quite sort of, she had stats coming out. I was really impressed by how you presented yourself, I have to say.
Oh, thank you. But we had fun as well, didn't we? We liked to sort of shock that sort of audience. And I think for both of us, working on companies which are female focused, and we're raising money from male investors are not naturally going to understand our businesses. And I don't know if you've had this with your business, but particularly what we do in women's health, pelvic floor health, breastfeeding, or whatever it is, things that people don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
It gets emotional and personal really quickly. So that's why I sort of use the science and the stats to kind of elevate the conversation out of that.
For you, even more so than me, when I'm in front of male investors and when I was raising for Trinny London, I went in with a language which was very emotionally driven to begin with. And I realized I had to change my language for the audience that was there, which is kind of what you're talking about. But yours is far more intimate. It's far more squirming for some members of that audience. So how did you adapt your pitch for the audience you were presenting to when you were fundraising?
Yeah, and you learn along the way, right, by sort of getting it wrong. And I think at the beginning, so just as you mentioned, I had no background in tech. I'd been working in international development, international health. So the first time I went to meet investors, I was absolutely petrified. And I was a new mum, I had a baby at home. But male investors in those days often would make it quite personal quite quickly, like say things such as, well, I spoke to my wife and she doesn't think this is an issue. Or they would literally bring in a female intern. So it immediately sort of changed it. And sometimes also, no, I don't know why I'm defending men here, but sometimes they just also were so awkward. They didn't even know how to talk about it. Yeah, I can imagine the situation, yes. So then again, you should go for the stats and the fact that, 80% of new mums are suffering from pelvic floor. This is a natural part of womanhood. But there's been a real evolution. So at the beginning, we were this sort of vagina tech business.
What was your first product? How did you decide what your first product was going to be as well?
Yeah, it actually happened the other way around. It wasn't like I wanted to even start a business or anything. So I was working at Mary Stopes International, which is the largest provider of abortion services for women, which is, again, a highly taboo issue. I love my job. I was head of research and innovation. Yeah. But then it was when I was pregnant and I was in a Pilates class and my instructor said to me, Tania, the most important thing you need to do as a woman to look after your body is do your pelvic floor exercise. And I didn't know how you felt when you became a parent, but I felt like there was so much focus on the baby and nothing on how we were feeling as women. It was completely neglected. And then my husband's French, and in France, French women are just a bit different, right? So happy women, happy baby, right? There's just...
there's the more they put themselves
openly
first.
selfish.
Openly selfish.
Yeah. Yes. And every woman is paid for to have like pelvic floor exercise. So originally I was like, we should do what they're doing in France. And I just basically became obsessed with this issue. Like it obsessed me that this, our vaginas, 51% of the population have vaginas, and yet we won't even look at them or acknowledge them. And we have sex problems, back problems, health problems, and nobody knows how to even talk about it. So it kind of took me on this whole pathway. And at the end of it, I realized what we need is to give women better technology, but also we need to talk about these issues more. So for me, I've always been more of a campaigner, even more than a business person, even more than a tech person.
But it's interesting that you are a campaigner, so you see what has to be done differently, but then to actually go ahead and go from that to producing a app-controlled tool is a huge step because you didn't have a tech background. So how did you then bring that knowledge into it? Or how did you go and find that knowledge and bring it into the business you started?
I mean, you just become obsessed. And I think like any entrepreneur, like you probably do with Trinny London too, like you see a problem you want to solve, you just go after it. And I think there's a lot of naivety. I had no idea how complicated it was going to be. If I had known that creating a waterproof product to stick inside your body that transmits by Bluetooth to an app, real-time data on your vagina, was quite complex. I don't think I would have done it. But yeah, how did I do it? I mean, it comes from maybe being a woman as well. We're sort of slightly more not pragmatic. I would say lower. I didn't go in thinking I knew all the answers. I went in quite a humble way. And because I knew I didn't know how to do it, I just you're a network of networks, right? So you talk to people you know, you talk to other people, you just reach out. And that early days, I would just write to people I, looked up on LinkedIn. I'd be like, you working on pelvic floor health? I've got this idea. And people want to help you. You know,
Yeah.
you just rely on good nature and you learn along the way. And I don't know how you feel, but I feel like actually business isn't that difficult to learn, right? I mean, it's very difficult to execute on, but ultimately you need to solve a problem, you need to come up with a product that you can then market and sell to your customer in an efficient way, right?
And it's that little step by step, because if you think I want to do this, that cavern seems huge to get there.
You and I are both naturally looking at it as the end user, which gives us an advantage because therefore we innovate in a different way. Like, there were pelvic floor products before Elvie Trainer, but they were designed by people who had 30, 40 years in medical device design, and they designed horrible devices which were painful to insert in the vagina with electrodes. You know, they didn't think about...
Torturous.
Barbaric and torturous.
Yeah.
What it's like as a woman to use these products. So I'm sure that's how you also think. And that's what led, so after we launched Pelvic Floor Trainer, that's what naturally then led to the next product, which was, oh my God, all products are just horribly designed. They are literally torturous, dark ages for women, but nothing epitomizes how badly tech is designed apart from the breast pump, which again is an incredibly intimate product. It goes on your breast, and yet it was hideous. I don't know if you used one.
I used one, and I remember I found a picture the other day where I was using one on a barge in Venice attached to my breast, trying to get the milk out. And I never got to use yours because obviously my daughter was far too old for breast milk by the time yours came out. But how did you, when you looked at that, you thought, I want to innovate? You had become a mum, so you knew the experience of what was on the market. But how did you go through a process of thinking, what would I innovate in this?
Yeah. So for those who don't know, the old-fashioned breast pump is literally a big box that you plugged into the wall, and it made this noise. It was painful, difficult to use. So normally when you innovate, you would choose, like, do I want to make it smaller, or do I want to make it quieter, or do I want to make it more discreet? You sort of choose a line of innovation. Yeah. But in this case, given that there'd been no innovation for decades, right, we just had to rip up the rule book and do really expansive thinking. They say, what if we could design something that was so quiet, you put it in your bra, let go, and it does it for you? But it was very high risk, right, to sort of completely redesign it. And people would say things like, oh, I don't know, women are not going to recognise that that's a breast pump. You know, we had that even with the men.
Okay, of course. Like, I'm sorry.
No, but you get that. And even with the pelvic floor trainer, because it was wirelessly charging, and this is 6 years ago, there wasn't much wirelessly charging. Somebody said, I don't think women are going to understand that. And there is just this assumption that women don't appreciate or benefit from great tech. Whereas if the tech helps a woman or a man, you know, they will. And that's what we proved, right? So we launched the breast pump, and we did it in an Elvie way. So we actually launched at London Fashion Week on the catwalk. We had a model walking down the catwalk, and then she revealed that she was pumping. And that's been a big thing for us. Like, you know, women just doing what they do and pumping at the same time.
Let's talk about that guerrilla marketing. Because I remember also you told me this thing of in Shoreditch when you were looking at the fact of women peeing of different ages, having had a baby or not, just incontinence is an issue. You did this sort of dribbling video of a woman actually, oh my God, I peed.
Yeah, we had a big billboard, and this fantastic woman who's a personal trainer and a mum, and she was basically doing a deadlift, and at the same time there was a stream of fake urine coming out. So again, it's your question about shock, right? Is it shock for shock value? But I do think, you know, I've worked a lot on taboo issues. I've worked in access to safe abortion, sex education, HIV prevention, and you have to get people talking. So you have to provoke that conversation, especially when it's very taboo. So that's very much what we're doing at Elvie, and it's about, you know, you have to get, if women are not talking about these issues, then there's not going to be change. But I think the real trick, if you can do, rather than just shock, is can you take something which is negative and yucky and switch into something that's positive and shareable? Breast pumping, if you look on our Insta, right, we have women who are just, you know, they're saying, look at me, I'm a surgeon, I'm performing surgery while breast pumping, I'm going rock climbing whilst pumping. Like, it's all this, like, I'm a superwoman. So we've switched it into something positive and shareable.
Let's talk a little bit about anyone who might be watching who feels, I've got an idea. You know, I think this is a great idea. What amount of time did you spend finessing your idea versus how am I going to sell my idea?
Yeah, so probably, like, I don't know if you had this experience at the beginning, you just think about all the things you need to do. And I tend to naturally jump to how am I going to market and sell this product?
It's not something that other people would naturally jump to. I think it's unusual.
Okay, well, I was going to say, I actually had to learn to be, like, laser focused on the product. Probably, like, you know, because the product, in order, it has to be differentiated. So you have to solve a problem for women or something. So
whatever your market.
So very much sort of focused on that straight away. But then I also had a very strong vision, which was quite personal, as in other people would have marketed these products as health products, right? But I believe, because we're as women, it's natural that we should be thinking about these things. These are just natural part of being a woman. I wanted to place it very much as a woman's brand.
When I started, I did the opposite of you, Tania. I was fanatical about the physical object and what it would be and the formulation. So it was like, for me, it was that it would be cream-based, that it was stacked together, that it would look beautiful, that it would replace your makeup bag. So I looked at portability, I looked at how we would, everyone could find which colours suit them. So I was so into that. And I remember one evening, my daughter's godfather, who was one of the first, he did angel investments in an SEIS round. He said to me, Trinny, be really mindful that if you spend too much time finessing your product, you will not be able to ever sell it, because you won't have thought the plan of how you sell it. And at that stage, I hadn't thought, would I do online? I was literally, this is the product. I was like, how are you going to sell it? And that's when I then thought, well, I've got to sell it online. This is how I'm going to sell it. This is how the tech would work.
There's so much you can learn from the way startups do it in the digital space. The lean startup, I don't know if you read that book, or this idea of just constantly, as Google's motto is, like, fail fast and learn. Yeah. It has to come through iteration. You need to keep just testing, doing something small, testing it with your audience, retesting it, and just keep refining it and not trying to get it too perfect. Right?
Which is a D2C concept, because online you can change out a picture, you can switch out an ad if you're doing Facebook, you can do all these things. Whereas if you're in a retail environment, there's wholesale, you've given it to them now, I can't change the product. There's more flexibility on D2C, which is not necessarily the most fashionable thing now. I still believe thoroughly in D2C.
And you have to constantly listen to your consumer, right? Because you had a very strong view on what you wanted to create, because you're an expert, and I knew what I wanted to create. But if your idea is not constantly being attacked and constantly being destroyed and you have to rebuild it, then something's going wrong. I remember when I first had the idea for Train, I had it in my head and I was like, oh my God, this is like the best idea ever. And I didn't want to tell anyone. And then somebody who was like sort of this innovation guy was like, Tania, you need to talk to people, because first off, if somebody can copy it straight away, then it's a terrible idea. And second, if people are going to destroy it, then you'll just improve it over time. You need to constantly be open to that failure and allowing your ideas to be criticised.
There's many people who have a great idea. And when the idea is inside your head, it's very safe. It's safe from criticism. It's safe from losing the dream. You can have the idea inside your head and think, one day I will. And you can go out with your friends and say, one day I'm going to do this. And it still is feasible. There's no failure involved in it. But ultimately, you've never started it. As soon as you take it out, it's on the kitchen table. You need what you say. You need that critique.
And also, because a lot of women, like, say you've had a lot of success in your career, and it's more, if I do ABC, I'm going to get DEF, I'm going to get promoted in this job. And suddenly, when you start your own business, you've got people telling you all the time, you're crazy, your idea's crazy, this business is crazy. So we say we need to have skin like a rhino. You need to learn how to sort of deflect this criticism. But at the same time, you have to be humble enough to sort of work out what's objectively you need to also listen to improve things. It's a very humbling. It's very tough, humbling. I think, on your own.
Did you have a moment ever where you had people telling you it's a bad idea, it's never going to work, and you were in a situation where they had to eat their words?
Oh yeah, that's my favourite. Okay, isn't that what you have? I know, just so many. Because everybody rejects this, right? Yeah. I mean, at the beginning, see, the tech world was mostly male, right? But all I had to keep focusing on was, I'm creating a palatable product that I know from a scientific point of view is going to solve a problem for women. And if I can solve that problem, I know women are going to be happy. So just trying to ignore the fact that, tech investors thought we were crazy. And I just focused on women. And yeah, it's all those rejections you get at the beginning. I had one, how investors can be so arrogant. I had one email just saying, we've decided not to invest, and here are the reasons why we think you're going to fail. Bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. And at the end, good luck, and I hope you prove us wrong. In this incredibly dismissive way. And I never contacted that person again, obviously, but then it did give me a bit of pleasure 2 years later when they wrote and said, we hear you're fundraising, we'd love to be considered. And the problem in the tech world of entrepreneurs is the type of person who's an entrepreneur tends to be, because you have to be good at pitching, so it tends to be people who can sell, maybe oversell, right? So I tend to take more of an approach, back to your question about egos, just keep my head down, ignore it, and then at some point prove people wrong.
Yeah.
You and I first met about 7 years ago, like before, just at the very, very
You came to
embryonic
see me at
stage.
Elm Place. I just started.
And you tested Elvie trainer.
And I tested the shower, and I remember you passed it to me, and we filmed it. We might even have a film of that now. Should we just throw that in?
Yeah, and you then did my makeup as well in your bathroom. And
Multitasking.
but what I was going to say, we were both at embryonic stage, but now fast forward, and we're both quite similar size and scale.
Yeah.
And you're right, because we're doubling every year. It is so frenetic, and then the expectations on us as CEO changes every year, and that's what makes it thrilling, because we're constantly learning. I'm the sort of person, I'd get quite bored if I'm doing the same thing for a long period of time. But then you have to hope. There have definitely been times when being CEO of Elvie hasn't necessarily suited my skills, right? You have to just hope at some point they reconverge, or you get coaching and
exactly.
But yeah, I'm a real problem solver, right? So I like to just jump in, and that's why the early stage does suit me quite well. And actually that's why the last 2 years I realised didn't suit me as well.
Yeah.
But then it was about bringing in the right people. I brought in this amazing woman called Sarah Highfield, who was CFO at Costa Coffee, and she's just an operational beast, and that's what we need for the next phase. We talk a lot about how to support women in the workplace, right? And I'm so fed up as well as being at conferences and being asked, how do we support more female entrepreneurs? And I think everybody knows what needs to be done, right? We need to focus more on recruitment, some of the boring stuff, right? And then retention. And we know retention, the key issue is when women become parents. That's when they drop off. So I do think more accessible, as in less expensive, childcare is the most important thing right now to keep women.
Government support for women who want to be in the workforce and need childcare.
Absolutely.
It's a good one. It's a fundamental one, really. For me, I'm just thinking what it would be. And I don't know if this is right to say it this way, but I think more education on what you need to know to go down entrepreneurship as a route. Because I think that you and I never had anyone or any government body saying how to start a business. There was SEIS when I started, with tax breaks, which have all been removed since I started Trinny London. And just the way of you put your life into growing a business, and there's not much clear help, financial help or other help to help you navigate as a woman, that first of all, you don't have an over large amount of your equity removed very early on. And traditionally, more women have divested of their ownership of a business far earlier than men.
Yeah.
And I think there's an education.
Absolutely. And getting the right talent in. Education, and going even further, I think where you're absolutely right, when we started this businesses, there weren't many companies of our scale, tech companies, right? The tech ecosystem was quite, embryonic here in the UK. And now it's flourishing. We've got this amazing tech ecosystem, but the government's support has decreased in the last couple of years, and bringing the right talent in has got harder. So
still lots of work
more to be done there.
Tania, it's been such a pleasure having you on, and thank you so much for watching, everybody. We have had a series of different talks during International Women's Month, and we'll also put a link on the bottom for the other women we've talked to, as each one has a fabulously different point of view. Tania, thank you so much.